Hello, welcome back to the first Transfer Portal CFB Week 0 preview. It's super weird, guys. College football's back in just a few days. We don't have to talk about what we were talking about in previous months, like how well we could all bake lobsters, what kinds of cakes we're making, all that garbage. We actually have college football content to talk about, games to look forward to.
College football's
Players
back.
to watch. College football's back. Texas is back. UCLA might be back.
Whoa.
Hold up.
The U is
Wait a
back.
minute.
The U is back.
No. Flag on the flag.
That might
False
be a yellow
start.
card.
Adrian
False start.
Martinez is back.
You're off to
Unfortunately,
a hot start, Liam. Hot start.
No.
Like where your
it's
head's
going
at.
bad. No.
I'm just super ecstatic for a season to finally start. Finally, actually stop talking about what could happen and see what will happen. I know you guys are thrilled as well. That's why you three decided to show up to the Week 0 preview, because no one else wanted to, did they? We're the true sickos of this sport that want to see every single facet of the game, even if the game of the week is Nebraska Northwestern.
you know what? Second year in a row that Nebraska might be in the game of the week, and obviously different location, but we'll talk a little bit more about that game a little bit later. But of course, college football is back. We'll take any college football we can get. We don't have to watch other sports that may be going on. Our sport is finally back.
Amen.
And
Didn't say it better myself.
of course, I am joined by Andrewster, Doug, and Adam today. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and we'll get right into this with this topic. Do you like the idea of international games? Because Nebraska and Northwestern, they are playing in Dublin. The last game outside of the Bahamas Bowl that was played internationally was 2017. Stanford obliterated Rice in Sydney, Australia.
Yeah, see, I'm kind of right now. I'm gonna say I don't like the idea, and that's because I'm just not sure that the fan base is there yet for college football. Granted, that it's only one way to get it there is by playing games there, but to send no offense, but to send Nebraska versus Northwestern, that's not who you want representing your brand, right?
They sent their worst soldiers.
And I understand why you don't send like Alabama versus Ohio State, right? Because you want that money for, those schools in that city. But they could have picked a better game, a better team. I feel like, I don't know how y'all feel, but
I would agree with that sentiment, but the problem for me is I don't want this outside of week 0, because it really doesn't make sense to have this being a midseason, especially once we get into conference play. Like if you're sending, let's say, UCLA versus Washington, while those two teams are still in the Pac-12 before it becomes the Pac-10, if we send those teams to like Tokyo, how much could that affect their seasons? Like what if UCLA has a game next week in, Corvallis? Is that going to affect how they play? I don't really want for that. If it's week 0, I'm completely cool. I would prefer it to stay in week 0 rather than weeks 1, 2, and 3, because then we might actually have good games. But yeah, Adam said it's just not great representation of our brands. Nebraska, Northwestern. Nebraska is a big brand, but I mean, if we've seen what Scott Frost has done there over the last few years, it's not the greatest representation of what we want people seeing out of college football, this amazing sport. So if we are to continue it, which I like it, if we're going to have awful neutral site games at like Dallas, no offense, Adam, or just some other random NFL stadium, we might as well spice it up a little bit, take it to other countries, maybe a game in Canada, maybe a game in Mexico. I would kind of limit the stuff outside of the oceans, going across the ponds, but outside of week 0, I really would not care for it.
See, for me, I like it. Like I said, I like the week 0 games. It's a nice change of pace. It's a great way to spruce up the college football landscape. My caveat is I don't want a game in Canada. Canada, like if you want Canada, just go to Detroit or Buffalo's right there. those cover Canada. Like the International Bowl doesn't exist for a reason because it was the drizzling shits. On a funny note is that I actually want to see a game back in Japan. Back in the early 90s, the Big Ten and the Big Eight used to do conference games in Tokyo. And Tokyo does like they had like I think an Ivy League school there a few years ago playing football.
Penn.
Penn, exactly, Penn. So it's like there's like I said, it's not a biggest market, but there is a market for it, and just make it interesting. Like Nebraska, Northwestern. Granted, people thought Northwestern would be better. People thought Nebraska could actually throw a forward pass, and who knows? Like Nebraska probably can throw a forward pass. Northwestern, yeah, I got no hope for them. But that's beside the point. But yeah, no, these games are fun. They should be fun. Granted, none of them will be like the Bahamas Bowl where you can just walk up without tickets, but it's fun. It's one-offs, and we don't really have exhibitions for like we do other sports. Like week 0 is a perfect way to show the beauty of the pageantry of college football.
Yeah, and I'm pretty neutral on this topic. I love a lot of it, but then like Adam said, they sent their worst soldiers to Dublin. Like I feel bad for the folks that are going to go to this game and have to witness Nebraska and Northwestern, that gross clash of Big Ten punting and just awful fumbles and everything. I would love to see, like Doug said, another game in Japan in bowl season. Like Andrewster said, Canada, but I know the weather really would prevent that from happening in the middle of December. How about a bowl game in Mexico? I think that could do very well. I think that's something that the NCAA should probably look into, and just get fun teams to play in it. Like, don't send horrific brands of football to play in these international games. I love trying to grow the game, but Nebraska and Northwestern, when these folks in Dublin leave the stadium, are they going to talk about how much they would like to see those two teams play again? Are they going to be counting down the days until they could watch Northwestern football again? No. Maybe they'll want to watch Alabama. I don't know. But these two teams don't move the needle in the slightest.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate matchup. I'm sorry to all the people of Ireland that are going to watch that game. It is still going to be a fun game because it is college football. But if you're not a fan of the sickos form of the game, as we are, you may not have the most fun. You are going to see a lot of punting, which I don't know the rules of rugby or any other types of sport that are played in Ireland. Maybe there's a little bit of punting.
I just hope the
Gaelic football is the one that they play a lot.
Definitely heard the accent too.
I caught that too. I thought that was the only one. I caught that. I was like, wait.
Okay, that was not planned. That was not planned.
It's okay, bro. It's okay.
You know what? I don't know. Let's move on, Liam.
Yeah, I just hope that the first points of the season aren't scored via safety. Now,
shout out Cam Taylor-Britt.
How about something positive to look at, though, for real? What maybe your favorite storyline that you're looking forward to in week 0?
I know one of my favorite storylines, not just week 0, the whole season, is Casey Thompson. A little bit more of a connection to him because he was Texas quarterback last year, but I think he's really good. I think he had 24 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. So those aren't like spectacular numbers, but they're not bad. He just had some really bad mental errors in the second half of games. But if he can grow from that, learn from that, that was really his first year starting, was last year in a shaky Texas offense with a horrible offensive line. Coach really didn't trust him that much, Now, new system, fresh start. I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. Can't lose to Northwestern though. So, but that's one of the things I'm looking for, not just week 0, for all year.
Yeah, I love how Liam said, let's move on to something positive. I'm going to move on to something very negative. I want to see how much Nevada sucks this year. They lost.
Oh my gosh.
Emphasis.
I'm sorry, Nevada fans or anybody that's associated to the state, but that team is going to suck. There is a chance they are possibly the worst team in that state, and there's another team south of them that is probably also going to not be very good. They lost so freaking much. They lost their quarterback, wide receiver, tight ends, head coach, pretty much everything. I know Liam made a joke a few days ago about how half their team is walk-ons. I don't know if that's true.
It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a joke.
Okay, well, that's not the greatest. But for a team that is projected to be that bad, they have a week 0 matchup against New Mexico State. New Mexico State is awful. Like, we know how bad they are, especially over the last 10 or so years. New head coach, new regime, new everything there. It's very rare that New Mexico State is usually a single-digit dog. We don't see that very often. Nevada, however the heck you want to say it, is a 9-point favorite against the Aggies. If Nevada doesn't cover that, there is some serious problems that I don't even know if we want to talk about, because they may just be that bad that we just ignore them.
Andrew,
Pretty harsh.
like my brother, take a chill pill.
He's
Like-
bringing the fire in
Hey, I don't
week
have
zero.
triples, I have
Alright.
Week fire for week 0
Yeah.
for Nebraska, Nevada team.
We haven't even talked
Like-
about Iowa yet. That's wild.
I know.
Fired up.
Like,
started
I
on
mean,
them.
Like you sound like me whenever we talk about Auburn. So like, but to get back on track here, my main storyline is whether any sort of U.S. citizen will be allowed back in Ireland after this ugly matchup, man. Like, come on now, let's be honest. Like, Northwestern, they do this thing. They go 3-9. They make a run to the Big Ten title game. They go 3-9 again. They do this on and off, on and off. I get it. Northwestern, they're not the most resources, but pick a struggle. Either you're gonna be really good or really bad. Like, I don't like this flip-flopping. It is bad for my gambling habits. Like, I need them to be consistent. Like, if the line is 3, the most likely they'll go 9-3. And I could make money there. If the line's like 8.5, then they're gonna lose, like, win 3 games out the year. I don't like it. And Nebraska, on a much more serious note, I want to see Mark Whipple, how he is able to adjust after leaving Pitt to go to Nebraska. Casey Thompson is a good, talented quarterback. It's a good start. And if Nebraska can start off well, I can actually see Frost and a whole bunch of other coaches keep their jobs. Although the whole puking comment isn't really helping him in the year of our Lord 2022, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah, and I'd like to go on a more positive note here for my favorite storyline. Grant DuBose of Charlotte. Let's drop some of his story here. In 2019, he played at Miles College, a D2 HBCU, and then of course the pandemic hit in 2020, and we all know how many lives that affected. His was included. He was impacted real hard. Miles College didn't play football that entire 2020. Grant was a 19-year-old kid, wide receiver, didn't even do much in his first year at Miles. He ends up working 3 jobs in 2020, including one at Walmart. As a 19-year-old kid, he has no clue what's happening for his future in football. Fast forward to the summer of 2021, James Foster, who's a quarterback at Charlotte, not the starter, but he is on the roster, I believe, QB2. He grew up 20 minutes away from Grant. They knew each other, I believe, went to high schools very close to each other in Montgomery, Alabama, reached out and encouraged Grant to try out for Charlotte in the summer of 2021. Like weeks before the season begins, is telling him to go try out. Grant tries out, gets on the team, impressed them so much. A few weeks later in the season opener, he has 4 catches for 118 and 2 touchdowns. He is one of the best stories in the country. I think he's one of the best. A group of 5 receivers. I rank him number 7. He is a legit NFL prospect. He is my favorite storyline in week 0 and beyond. I don't think there might not be an easier kid to root for in this sport right now. Everybody should be a fan of Grant DuBose and watch him and his come up. He's got a lot of money that he's going to make. He is a dang good football player, and his story needs to be spread. It's pretty inspirational in my opinion.
Sounds amazing. Can't wait to root for him this year.
That's beautiful. And also want to do a quick follow-up on a much more other serious note. Like, Andrew was talking about Nevada earlier. I'm actually curious about New Mexico State. Jerry Kill, former coach of the Minnesota Golden Gophers, was actually pretty good. It's just that he's always had these health complications that prevented him having a long-term stint there with his history of seizures. So I just want to see. New Mexico State's a really low pressure environment. It's good to see him on the sidelines, like running a program again. Granted, the matchup Nevada should win, and even though Nevada's not great, but I just really want to see how New Mexico State looks under a competent coach, and just rooting for Coach Kill to do really well.
In complete agreement with you there. Let's talk about a matchup that you're most intrigued by.
For me, this one was kind of tough. I went with UNT versus UTEP. Conference USA. We got two Conference USA matchups this week. I chose that one because Grant Gunnell, he was pretty popular quarterback in Texas. Went to Arizona. Could have went to A&M, Ohio State, Alabama. For some reason, he chose Arizona. Messed up his shoulder. He hasn't played in a year and a half. He's back at UNT. I want to see what he does. I think Conference USA, obviously UTSA is the favorite, but that second spot is going to be tight. UNT, they want to get out to a good start. And so I chose that one.
Yeah, well, we both have the same matchup, even though I do disagree with the UTSA take. I think UAB is the favorite, and we're actually there's a fight for third. I think UTSA is steady in there. We have a top two. We're looking for that third team. It could be North Texas. I think that they have a chance to be good. It could be UTEP. They are losing Jake McCown, the wide receiver transfer that goes to Arizona. So they do lose a lot of offensive production. And there's a guy I'll talk about a little bit later that I expect to take that next step. Ronald Awatt, not him, but another offensive piece for that minor offense. I think he's going to have a massive, weight on his shoulders. North Texas loses their leading rusher, I do believe. That is a very interesting game for a CUSA that is wide open in the middle of the conference.
Yeah, so funny enough, I went with a matchup in CUSA, but it's more so Charlotte versus Florida Atlantic. For me, last year, both these teams are 5-7, and I'm just curious to see the trajectory under both coaches, especially Willie Taggart. Granted, Lane Train, great coach, human being, kind of maturing a bit, but that's just had the point. So we've seen Taggart have success at this level of Western Kentucky. We've seen him have success in Florida with South Florida. He's not a bad coach. I just want to see much more progression coming from Florida Atlantic. And Kosi Perry won a starting job. He's has actually had a full season, off season at FAU now, because he came in late last year. Teams developing, and they have a lot of talent, Allied, Jaquan Burton's one player that I'm actually looking at. I'll actually get into him later for player focus. He's insane, in terms of measurables. I think that with a fully developed Nkosi and Burton and the rest of that receiving core, I think Florida Atlantic can do things. But like I said, this is potentially a battle of eligibility at week 0, which is funny to say.
I think it's kind of funny that Andrewster and Adam both picked the same Conference USA game, and Doug and I also picked the same. I am ecstatic to watch Charlotte FAU. I think it's a significant game. Both teams have really intriguing rosters, and they're underrated in a top-heavy Conference USA, as you two spoke about. It's an early conference clash, and it's something that we should all really be looking forward to. Like Doug said, this could be a battle for bowl eligibility. I think both teams will make a bowl regardless of who wins or loses this game. I just think this is going to be one of the better games this week. Again, Grant Dubose is going to be out there. You speak to Burden. They're fun head coaches as well. Maybe Willie's not so fun, but Healy's really fun. That game's going to be a joy to watch, I think. How about the team with the most to gain?
For me, I chose the team that they might only win 2 games all year. So if you lose one of them, that's 50% of, your win total. I chose Vanderbilt. I think you have to beat Hawaii. If you can't, then you might not win a game all year. So I feel like that has to be the most to gain for me.
Yeah, I went a bit of a different direction. I'm going to go Northwestern, like Doug talked about earlier. Very inconsistent team. You can say that the only consistency that they have is inconsistency. This is a team that if they do take down Nebraska, we're not going to act like Nebraska is this impenetrable force with all this stuff that they've added. Northwestern is still a good team, very well coached team, and Pat Fitzgerald, who's one of the most respected head coaches in the country. If they can find a way to take down Nebraska in Ireland, it sets them up for, not a great record. It's a bit more of a stacked Big Ten West in, compared to other years. But Northwestern, I love their running back, Evan Hull. I think that he can tote the rock, at a pretty good rate. If Northwestern can take down Nebraska, it's going to keep them from going 2-10, 3-9, and maybe push them up to that like 5-7 range.
All right, so I'm gonna cheat here. So I'm gonna choose the loser of the UTEP North Texas game. Both coaches basically essentially saved their asses from being fired last year, with North Texas winning 5 straight games essentially to close out the year up until bowl game, and then they lost that. And then Dana Dimel at UTEP, which is probably top 5 hardest job in the country because it's in the middle of bone fuck nowhere. Yeah, so like both of those guys end up saving their jobs, finishing 7-6. But like, is this last season a blip, or is it actual progression? If it's a blip, I can probably see them going back and firing more so Luttrell rather than Dimmel, because UTEP doesn't have that kind of resources. Whoever loses, it's looking rough really early. Like I said, even though Conference USA has the depth, but you guys are higher on them, I'm not as much. So
I would say UConn has the most to gain in week 0. At the end of the day, it comes down to being respected. Nobody's given the Huskies a fighting chance against Utah State, who was pretty dang good last year, as you might recall, one of the best stories in the country last year. But if UConn's competitive in the first game of the Jim Mora era against that Utah State team that thrived last season, plenty of people are going to look. They're going to see it. They're kind of going to show some respect to UConn for being competitive in this game. And maybe there's a little excitement about the future. I don't know. I do think, though, that if UConn goes out there, competes real hard, makes that game a lot closer than that 27.5, 28 point spread, maybe a lot is gained.
Okay, I just realized I blanked on the question because you guys asked most to gain and I gave you most to lose. Apologize for that. Just let me just answer this real quick. Hawaii, you rarely get a Power 5 team at the island, especially a team in SEC. They don't really travel much ever since they banned the Hawaii rule for teams that are banned from bowl games. But even though Vanderbilt sucks and probably will for a foreseeable future, it's Timmy Chang's first game. Like, your head coach of your alma mater, you're a legend at your school. And what better way to start off by beating a Power 5 team at your own house? Like, it's just the great way to start that program. And if they do win, actually you get some momentum recruiting, get some actual talent. Maybe not go to a bowl game this year, but who knows? Like, Hawaii's not a bad job. It's a difficult job, but it's not a bad job.
And it's going to be a raucous crowd there. It's going to be one heck of an environment.
Are they still at a smaller like state? Because I know the whole issue with Aloha. Are they still at that little sports box, or?
I think they're still there. I just think that there's going to be more fans allowed. I could be wrong, but I do think that they're still at that same venue.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I am blanking right now. We'll go to most to lose, though, which Doug did answer, but we'll go to you, Adam.
I think it has to be Nebraska, right? Like, they did all this talk about the best 3-9 team of all time. You got Casey Thompson. You got rid of Adrian Martinez. Scott Frost is on the hot seat. You're playing game of the week. You're representing college football to the world, literally, in Ireland, or Ireland, as Schuster tried to say. But you can't go out there and lay an egg. You just can't.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to go a different direction because I know we're going to talk about a lot about Nebraska and the pressure that they have. Let's talk about a team that lost to an FCS opponent last year that's facing one this week. Can Florida State show out against Duquesne, please? Like, last year, you put up an absolute stinker against Jacksonville State. And if you don't absolutely murder Duquesne, we have some serious problems. There's some high aspirations for the Seminoles this year. A lot of people think that they could be a sleeper team in the ACC going 7-5, 8-4 in the Mike Norvell era, where I believe they've gone 3-9 and 5-7. They need to be better. This is your chance to say, hey, we're not going to suck against FCS opponents this year. And this is a runway game going into Louisiana next week when they got to play LSU. It's at the Caesar Superdome, so you don't got to worry about Tiger Stadium, even though it will still be an LSU heavy crowd. If they don't murder Duquesne, we have some serious problems.
Storyline to track there. Florida State If they lose, second straight loss against the FCS team, Duquesne looking for their second straight win over the FBS team.
A lot riding.
UConn. It's UConn last year, wasn't it? Or was it not?
No,
For
less.
Duquesne?
No, Duquesne beat Ohio 28-26.
Ooh, Tim Alvin. Not great.
So I agree with that. It's so obviously Nebraska, and I respect Ann Trustor and Doug going in different directions. But if these guys go out there in Dublin and lose to Northwestern after being dubbed the greatest 3-9 team of all time, the program might need we might need a death penalty or something. There is no coming back from that. There is just no coming back from being the best 3-9 team in the history of sports to losing to Northwestern in the land of the potatoes. You cannot do that. Please do not do that. Let's move on to a game to watch. What's one game that you really are looking forward to watching this week?
I'm gonna stick with Vanderbilt versus Hawaii. I think that both of those teams, they kind of match up. They complement each other in a way that Vandy really struggled to score last year. I think they only averaged like 13 points a game or something horrendous. And Hawaii couldn't stop anybody. Us four could probably go out there and put up 17 against Hawaii last year. So I think they're gonna complement each other. That's the latest game, isn't it? Isn't that the late game?
Mm-hmm.
It's Hawaii. It probably is.
Yeah,
10:30.
Yeah, 10:30, be up late anyways, you know. So that's a game I'm probably gonna be watching. I think it's gonna be it's a classic sickos game to me. It's gonna be real ugly. So I'm
You said
forward to
that
one.
you know we could put up 17 points. My question to you is, where are each of us playing?
I feel like Liam has to be the quarterback.
Thank you. Finally, someone.
Liam's the quarterback. Doug, running back.
That's a bad choice.
Bad.
Yeah,
Tight
man.
end.
Like
Doug tight end. Doug
It
tight
can't
end.
be worse than me.
I can block a little. Tight end works.
Doug tight end and Drewster slot. And then I'll be out wide. We're just not going to run the ball. We don't need to against
We're
Hawaii.
air raid.
Exactly. That's what we do.
We don't need to run the ball.
All right, Liam, hit me over the middle.
All right, I just throw a laser. Did you catch it?
No, it bounced off my helmet.
Thanks, man.
Damn. Adrian Martinez right there.
Wow. And going from talking about us as football players, I'm going to talk about the UConn Husky revolution. Jim Moore, I love some of the moves he's made with UConn so far. They're recruiting pretty dang well, to be honest. And I think that's going to pay dividends for the future. Now, I don't expect them to beat Utah State. I think Utah State is a very good team, but I am excited to see what UConn has done over the last few months to prepare them for this season, because I don't expect them to be a pushover. You know, look for the UConn Huskies to not go down without a bark and a bite this year.
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna go back.
Barking a fight. What are you doing, man?
All right, so we're gonna end this recording because Ann Drewster has just killed the vibe. Like you just see, you do this, man. You do this all the time, man. Like everybody's enjoying themselves, and next thing you know, boom, Ann Drewster comes up with the worst pun or worst play on words. Like he comes up with the worst verbiage I've ever heard in my lifetime. Disgraceful to literature. Shakespeare's disappointed in you.
I was never a
Actually,
fan.
all righty. You never was a fan of yours either.
Well, I
Anyways,
would hope he's dead.
you never know. They're spirits. Beside the point. Back to my point. I actually do my game. I'm still really curious about is Charlotte versus Florida Atlantic. It's a Charlotte defense that was Stephen Powell dog poo versus the Florida Atlantic offense that was also Stephen Powell dog poo. With Florida Atlantic's advantage, they have returned everybody. I mean, although when your offense is pretty bad, you want some fresh blood, but everybody's playing together again, so consistency can probably help them. Charlotte's got a new defensive coordinator, returning front attack. So like there should be progression. Do I expect it to be heavy? Who knows? That's the beauty of this game. We don't know until we know. Unless it's Nebraska, then we know they lose. But other than that, like just the beauty to see two of the worst face each other. That's really what college football's about.
I also did like that Andrewster brought up Mora and UConn's recruiting efforts. That's what happens when you bring in former UCLA DB Jaleel Wadud to be a recruiting assistant, and Mora goes out there and brings guys back to help build the UConn program. I don't know why you guys are shaking your heads. I'm just giving Mora credit for going out there and bringing guys back to be a part of a complete rebuild at UConn. I wish that other coaches brought guys back a lot more to come back and give back, help their coach back. A coach giving a player an opportunity. I don't see why they're shaking of heads. I wish that this happened so much more in college football.
It's a shameless plug, Liam.
This is nasty. This is
This
nasty.
has nothing to do. It's just straight up. I wish that teams did it more. I wish that coaches gave former players this opportunity a whole lot more. I love the opportunity when a former player gets the opportunity to go on staff at a school and start a coaching career. I'm sorry for really liking that. Now, my game to watch is at the FCS level. It's Stephen F. Austin, Jacksonville State. It's going to be a super fun matchup between FCS foes. I pull an Andrewster foes. It's gonna be on ESPN. This is Rich Rod's first year at the helm for Jack State. They're going to be a Conference USA member in 2023. So this gives us, FBS fans a chance to see what Jacksonville State's going to bring to the FBS very shortly. They played a very close 28-24 contest last season in which Jacksonville State won. Stephen F. Austin made the playoffs last year. You might recall they only lost to Texas Tech 28-22, so by 6 points last year. They returned the vast majority of their roster. Xavier Gibson, SFA wide receiver, might be 5'9". Dude is absolutely electric. There's a reason NFL evaluators will be watching him all season long. Make sure to put ESPN on in the afternoon on Saturday to watch this game. Super fun environment that they always have in Montgomery. And Gibson's going to electrify. Please make sure like that one. And speaking of highlighting a certain player, it's time for player focus. We're doing it different this year. We're doing one Power 5 player for all of us and one Group of 5 / FCS player. Let's go with the Power 5 first.
So my Power 5, I kind of cheated. I picked Treshaun Ward, Florida State running back, and / Trey Benson, the transfer from Oregon. Florida State was horrible. Well, they were horrible throughout last year in all aspects, but they couldn't run the ball at all. And I remember at Memphis, Mike Norvell, that was Memphis's game plan. They ran the ball. They ran it down your throat. And they said, either you stop it or you lose. I want to see that at Florida State. Hit me with some ground and pound, pause, and then let's see what happens. They have an easy matchup. They should be able to run for 200 yards. I don't think they got over 150 last year. So, and they played an FCS school. So that's my first one. Then my second one, I talked about him before, UNT, Grant Gunnell. He's going to be it's really his first action in a year and a half. I think he's really good. He's back at home in the state of Texas again. So feels a little bit closer to home, a little bit more. I don't know the word for it, but I don't know. I'm going Grant Gunnell, Treshaun Ward / Trey Benson. Those are my two.
For me, I'm going to stick with the Seminoles, and you're talking about the running backs. I'm going to talk about the quarterback, Jordan Travis. He needs to, just show out for the Seminoles this year if they want to reach those lofty expectations. Lofty in comparison to the past few years, not what we should be expecting out of Florida State, because that would be a lot different. But, if he doesn't go out there and dominate a Duquesne team that they should beat easily, then, like I said earlier, we have a lot of problems with Florida State. Is Mike Norvell going to be on the hot seat a lot earlier than we think? Because I don't know if we can say he's on the hot seat like a Scott Frost, but, there needs to be significant improvement, and this is a good place to start. Going to the Group of 5, kind of alluded to this earlier when I was talking about UTEP. Tyron Smith has a chance to take that next step with Jacob Cowing out of the picture for the Miners, slot receiver for UTEP. If he can, show out against a North Texas team that should be solid, I think that's a great step for UTEP. Not trying to rhyme that, but it kind of worked.
Yeah. So for me, I had mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about Jaquan Burton, at least my G5, not only because Charlotte's defense is pretty bad, but also when we talk about Johnny Ford. Charlotte's replacing all their linebackers this year. It's looking pretty, like I said, there's so much change. And even though the front has remained the same, like the front still isn't really good. So like Johnny Ford should have a big day. Last year it was a blowout, but like I said, things change. Johnny Ford should do well. In terms of Power Five, like I'm just gonna go cheap. I'm gonna go lazy. I'm gonna go Casey Thompson. Like I said, anything over Adrian Martinez is an improvement, but Nebraska went full overhaul, added Mark Whipple, who was able to transform Kenny Pickett from ho-hum kind of do to next thing you know, one of the most electric quarterbacks in the nation. You give Whipple time to implement his system. It should work. Like Pitt also has a pretty good offensive line. So like Whipple's been able to work a lot with the talent. Nebraska, it's a training session essentially for them because, like I said, Northwestern's literally garbage. But it's good to get a few layups here and there to get warmed up for actual competition. So
my Power Five guy is Kevin Knowles, the second DB at Florida State. First off, shout out Jared Verse, Albany transfer. He's going to dominate at edge rusher for FSU this season. But I want to highlight a guy that I think is poised for a breakout season in Kevin Knowles the second. I love his aggressiveness, competitive, and fearlessness. I think he tackles really well too. I'm projecting him to have a prolific season. I'm banking on his terrific ball skills to show up in a big way. And I think he'll get at least 3 interceptions this season. Maybe I'm underselling him, not sure. But I do think Kevin Knowles the second is in line for a big year, and people are going to start talking about him as an NFL prospect soon enough. Super underrated when he was a recruit, 3 stars, even though he had the big dogs gunning for him. Florida State. Okay, I just put Florida State in the same sentence as Alabama and Clemson on accident. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but the big programs we're gunning for this talented 3-star. And then my group of 5 guy already talked about his story, Grant Dubose. He is so close to making it to the NFL. He's going to dominate in 2022. And he just plays with that juice, that fire, determination that you love to see. Make sure to watch Grant. And we'll go on and conclude with our game picks. We're going to start with Wyoming, Illinois.
Illinois. I don't think it's going to be close.
I'm going to take the Illini to start off well in year 2 of the Brett Bielema project.
Illinois, this is Craig Bowles' last season. I'm calling it now.
Wyoming lost way too much from last season, especially in the portal. Taking Illinois, we'll move on to North Texas, Utah.
It's close because it's in El Paso, but I'm taking UNT.
Hopefully this game's on an actual network. I haven't checked that yet because last year's UTEP week 0 game with New Mexico State, that was on like some random El Paso network. I'm going to take UTEP here.
I'm going to take UTEP because I like orange.
What a reasoning.
Did you go with your Eagles back?
Bro, like I just like orange, man.
I am curious to see who is the QB1 for UNT, if it's Ganell or On. I am taking UTEP though. Look out for edge rusher praise. Amawulehe. If I said that wrong, I'm so sorry. Pronunciation is tough. It's not hard to pronounce Vanderbilt though, and they're playing Hawaii. Who you got winning this game?
I mean, Hawaii's returning 5 starters, new head coach. I'm taking Vandy. I think it's gonna be close though.
Too much dysfunction to work with. I'm going to take Vandy.
It's Vandy, and also On won the job at North Texas.
Okay, there it is. I'm taking Vanderbilt. It's time for Clark Lee to back up his statements and earn our respect. And now we go to the transfer portal CFB Power 5 game of the week. Yeah, right off the bat, you could tell the choices weren't great because we're going to Ireland for Nebraska, Northwestern. Nebraska favored by 13.5. Who do you got on this one, Adam?
Nebraska, Casey Thompson to the moon.
I'm going to bite the bait. If I get yanked out of the water like a walleye in the lake, I deserve it. Give me Nebraska.
I thought you were setting us up for Northwestern.
No, I'm biting the bait because I think Nebraska's still overrated. But you know what? I have to take them because I really don't like Northwestern.
Who is rating them outside of Kenzie?
Nebraska, a lot of people. A lot of people.
It's shocking.
This is nasty work. Nebraska's going to win because, like I said, Northwestern should disband their football program every other year. They play like it's been disbanded. So
Also taking Nebraska for the sake of those poor Cornhuskers fans and those in Dublin. Do not lose this game. Do not put on a bad product. Scott Frost, do something productive. Nobody cares about 3-9. We don't care. And we'll move on to the transfer portal CFB Group of 5 / FCS game of the week. It's going to be a good one in Boca Raton for this Conference USA clash that we've kind of talked about a good bit. Charlotte at FAU.
This one was tight. I'm gonna take FAU, but Chris Reynolds and Grant Dubois scare me. I just think FAU has too much returning on offense, especially offensive line. So I'm going with them.
I've been one of the biggest fans of FAU over the last few weeks. I think that this is a 7, possibly an 8-win team. I'm going to take FAU here. I would also take the points. They are 7-point favorites, but we're not picking points. This is just outright at FAU.
FAU mainly because they have less rebuilding to do than Charlotte. Like I said earlier, Charlotte needs a lot of work on defense.
I'm taking Charlotte. They opened last season by kind of shocking people and winning against Duke. I love head coach Will Healy. I think the quarterback receiver connection between Chris Reynolds and Grant Dubose is going to be a well-oiled machine all season long. I'll take the 7-point underdog outright, and I'm thrilled to be the only person to take Charlotte today. Thank you, guys.
I'm thrilled that you're taking Charlotte.
Thanks. I'm thrilled that you're taking FAU. I'm gonna get a one up on all you three in the standings that Doug is trying to repeat it. Congrats, Doug.
It's funny because I didn't win the regular season or the postseason. I was just second in both, and nobody won both. So I was able to make it out alive.
The consensus between regular season and bowl season, and now
that was the Georgia.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair point. But that'll do it for our week 0 preview. I hope that y'all enjoyed, whether it be game analysis, players that we highlighted, or Andrew Drewster saying Ireland. I think it was a very productive week 0 show. We cannot wait to do more previews and reviews this season. Please be on the lookout for those, and make sure to watch all of our other content on YouTube. Listen to all of our other podcasts and stuff. Plenty of player interviews have been done. If you haven't watched the player interview with Grayson McCall, what are you doing? That guy is elite. That interview was elite. Please go watch that. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye. Enjoy your week 0.